Hello, everybody. I am Amy the Amazonian, and we're going to talk about Strixhaven Sealed. Strixhaven Sealed is going to be the format of the upcoming Arena Open. That is how you're going to enter to win some cash prizes in a tournament. It's really a gauntlet in Magic the Gathering Arena. That's going to be this upcoming weekend. So, you might not have played a lot of Strixhaven Limited, but I have played a lot of Strixhaven Limited, and I have some advice that I want to give to you. It's going to be everything from what are the sweetest rares, what are the commons to look out for, how do I generally build my deck in this set. So I want to actually start with a quick introduction to Strixhaven. So Strixhaven is split up into the Strixhaven set and the Mystical Archives. So whenever you open a pack of Strixhaven for draft, you're going to get 3 types of card, which means you can actually get up to 3 rares in one pack. Those 3 different types of cards are regular spells. This is the standard legal spells that are in your set. Lessons, which you usually keep on your sideboard and can be fetched with the Learn mechanic. These are also standard legal. And you see these cool bordered cards? These are the Mystical Archives. These are all not necessarily legal in standard, but they are a collection of cool spells from Magic the Gathering's history. Some of them are actually pretty recent, like Divine Intervention. And they appear one of in each pack, so you're going to have at least 6 of these, and then all sorts of other goodies in your draft packs. What does this mean for you? This means that when you are building your deck, you don't need to put these lessons in your deck. The Learn mechanic will let you get them from your sideboard. Any card you do not put into your deck in a sealed is part of your sideboard. It means that you may have some super high-powered spells that will catch your opponents off guard because they're rarer than the average spell. And you're also going to have a good slew of commons and uncommons and rares from Strixhaven. I will say Strixhaven is not a bomb-dominated set. It is actually a set where you need to build around your colors, and your colors are going to be kind of decided for you. There are certain color pairs which work better than others in Strixhaven. That is because they are the colors of the schools. There are 5 different schools in Strixhaven. We can even look at the deans here. Those schools are, you've got Silverquill. I'll just actually type in campus because that shows them. You have Silverquill, that's black-white. Prismari, that's red-blue. Witherbloom, that's black-green, Lorehold, red-white, and Quandrix, that's blue-green. So these 5 color combinations are going to be the ones that you're going to see cards in those color pairs. A lot of cards have hybrid mana, which means that you can cast them in either color that they have on them, and there is a good amount of fixing in this set, by which I mean these are common, so you're likely to get a couple of them in your sealed pool. There's a couple other pieces of fixing, but I find that the campuses are the biggest ones. In a draft or in a sealed, really in a sealed, you're going to have to go at least 2 colors. There's not a way to go 1 color in Strixhaven sealed. Don't try to do it. You're just going to cut yourself off from really good 2-color commons. Also, if you want to add in a 3rd color, it doesn't have to be something that is shared by a color pair, but it will be easier if you do, because then some of your fixing is going to overlap. I'll give an example. Let's say we are running a Quandrix mainly deck. So that means my deck is blue and green, but I want to splash into another color. The 2 colors I would say are easiest to splash into from Quandrix colors are going to be red, because then you're just splashed in a little Prismari, or black, because then you're splashing into Witherbloom. These are enemy color pairs. I've said that before, and that just means that the pips on the back of a Magic card are opposite from each other. It is not relevant to anything. I just thought that it's cool flavor. So these are the main color combinations, and I would say that if you have a preference to run aggressive decks, Silver Quill is probably going to appeal to you. If you like big spells, Prismari and Quandrix. Quandrix tends to have the ramp, Prismari tends to have the big payoff. If you just like big beat-em-up creatures, that's going to be Witherbloom. Also lots of removal happens to be in Silver Quill and Witherbloom. And then if you like graveyard synergies, that's going to be Lorehold. I think Lorehold is the hardest color combination to build in a sealed or draft, but it also has some of the strongest bombs. So if you happen to get a really good Lorehold card, then you might be playing that anyway. So I actually started a sealed pool, and I'm going to bring it up here and talk a little bit about the cards that I opened. So when you first start a sealed, it's going to show you 6 rares. Those are not necessarily all of the rares. I mentioned before that packs can have up to 3 rares. So when you first open up your sealed deck, I want you to go and check what your rares are by clicking Rare and Mythic Rare under Filters, and then you can see what they are. So in this pack, I did get some decent rares, but I also got kind of a bummer rare. Got Shrine Shadow Snarl. This is a rare land. You don't want to see these when you're doing a sealed. Rush of Birth is also kind of garbage. Time Warp is awesome. This is a, you can actually see here, this is from the Mystical Archive. Same with Putrefy. You can easily tell by the big fancy gold border. I've got a strong card here, Venerable War Singer. This is a card which you should pay attention to, because it can return itself from the graveyard when it deals combat damage. It's a little scary with the number of combat tricks. Multiple choice gets you very often like a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 because it draws a card. Worth paying attention to. This is really just Flamethrower Sonata is good removal. Sometimes Torrent Sculpture is like a 5/5 for 4 mana that has Word 2. It's not all that interesting. Harness Infinity, hard to pull off. Putrefy is just good removal. You don't always want your good removal to be a rare in this set, because there's strong removal at common and uncommon. So, also, when you are looking at how to build your deck, you should look at the multicolor cards that you have. So, I'm not filtering by uncommons, because a lot of the commons are as strong or stronger than the uncommons. So, looking at the multicolored cards, you're going to see some lessons. Again, you can keep these on your sideboard. If you are like 1 card short of your deck being, say, the 2-color deck that you really want, you don't have enough cards in your colors to make it exactly right, you can add a lesson into your deck. I recommend keeping them on the sideboard for the most part, because you will have cards that have Learn on them, like Rise of Exodus. By the way, this is a great card, really good removal. So I'm looking here, and I'm seeing, like, Rise of Exodus. I could play that in black or white. It has hybrid mana, even though you can't really see it. Let me go ahead and write that thing in the corner. Where is that? Where's the button? There it is. There we go. You can see it's got hybrid mana. That's black or white mana and its cost. Yes, 6 mana removal is good in this set. In fact, you're going to see a lot of very good cards that cost... Oh god, is that 7 mana? And am I going to tell you to play a 7 mana card in your deck? Yes. Yes, I am. By the way, in Sealed, it's hard to go 5-color, but in Draft, you can totally do it. It's really fun. And it's fun to, like, have your payoff be these big, crazy, expensive spells while the rest of your deck is, like, dirtling around in green. It's very fun. So you can see I've got a lot of cards that are in black and green here, so maybe I want to consider black-green. I've got Witherbloom Pledge Mage. Did you know a 5-mana 5/5 that has minor upside is actually very good in this format? Because Witherbloom Pledge Mage deals with a lot. Solid bodies are important in this format, and this is actually a spell-based format. I have never played a format before this one where I would be constantly running, like, 8-creature decks. Because there's a lot of spells that make creatures, and combat tricks are the name of the game. And you're going to have to play around the combat tricks in this game, because if you don't, you're going to lose. You don't have to worry about, I don't know, make your mark as much as you need to worry about burying books. That's a huge one. Actually, now I'm looking over here, I have Aether Helix, Eureka Moment. Gold ratio is okay. Biomathematician is alright. Zimone, excellent. Decisive Denial. Excellent. So those are the sort of cards that I want to be paying attention to when I'm building my deck. And again, these hybrid mana cards. So I'm going to actually skip over this. I feel like most people, if you were entering into the open, have some sealed experience. You know how to build a deck. I would say the biggest difference between this is, as I mentioned before, don't be afraid to have a low creature count as long as you have spells that can create creatures. Bounce spells are way better in this format than they are in other formats because there are a lot of big tokens. The card I mentioned before, Burying Books, Aether Helix also does a lot. Pro tip, by the way, about Aether Helix. It says return target permanent to its owner's hand. That can be your permanent. It can be your opponent's permanent. It can be your opponent's land. Just keep in mind, that can return lands to hand. It's come in handy before. I've managed to screw over my opponent's decks before with that. But you do need a permanent in your graveyard in order to get this spell to work, so I wouldn't run like 4 of them in a deck. That's asking for trouble. Clockwork Archivist, also really helpful as a common. So we're going to go ahead and look at a couple lists of cards I've put together. And to the people who are watching this being recorded live, if you have any questions, feel free to ask and I'll try to answer them. So I want to show you first the biggest bombs ever. These are, I would say, the best rares in this set. These are the rares that will win the game. And it's actually sometimes only like half of the card. You have to just like look at one side and not the other. So, Valentine in Lisette. Valentine is okay. Gets you value, turns off on death effects, exiles your opponent's creatures. Graveyard hate is like medium important in this set. Now Lisette, on the other hand, Lisette is awesome. There are so many small pieces of life gain in this set that will trigger Lisette and make your board big and trampling. Trample is not natural or native to most creatures in this set. So when you can give your, let's say, 8/8 fractal token +1/+1 and trample until end of turn, that can win you the game. So Lisette, very big. Lean and Light Scribe. This Magecraft ability, if you just have like 3 spells in your hand, especially spells that copy themselves, like Show of Confidence, it wins you the game. It's great. Lean and Light Scribe, by the way, if you are playing against one, you need to remove this card from the battlefield ASAP, or you will probably lose to it. Shale and Embrose. This Dean is actually good on both sides. Embrose, by the way, is Killian's dad. He's an ass. I don't like Embrose. Shale is a cute, sweet birdie bird who is also a good bird and not mean at all to their son. Actually, I don't know that for Shale. I don't think Shale has a son. Shale and Embrose, both sides are good. You can play either side. If you, let's say, only have white, you don't have black in your deck, only have black, don't have white in your deck, and you will be in a good spot. I would say that playing in black-white with this is the best situation because both sides of the card are good. Poet's Quill. This card gives repeatable life gain. It's a life link and +1/+1 on an equipment, and it also learns when it enters the battlefield. That means it gets a lesson from your sideboard, or it allows you to rummage from hand or just do nothing. There's almost no equipment removal in this set. The equipment removal that people are going to run is lessons. It's going to be Introduction to Annihilation or Containment Breach or Start from Scratch. I believe those are the 3 that you usually have to think about. Being able to gain life and give +1/+1 to, let's say, a random flyer you have is huge. This card does so much work. Dragon's Guard Elite. There's actually 3, I believe, different cards that have this Magecraft ability. Exactly the same one, but this one is on a 2/2. So Dragon's Guard Elite is a 2/2 that whenever you cast or copy a spell, gets +1/+1 forever, because it's a +1/+1 counter. And you can also pay 6 mana to double the number of +1/+1 counters on it. This is just a threat that gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and forces your opponent to kill or bounce it before it kills them. Crackle with Power. This is just a straight up game ender. Crackle with Power, you do not need that much mana to end the game, because the way it works is, let's say you pay 5 total mana. Okay, so you're dealing 5 damage to one target that you can, like, lava axe your opponent. Let's say you pay 8 mana. You're doing 10 damage to 2 targets. You're seeing where this is going? And you will get to 8 mana in most games of Strixhaven Sealed. Crackle with power. It wins games. Blot out the sky. This is just good because it spits out a ton of little flyers. Blot out the sky, the one thing I will say you need to be very careful of is that you read the card correctly. It makes tapped tokens. They are not able to block on the turn that you make them. Number 2, it destroys all non-land, non-creature permanents, both yours and your opponent's, and it doesn't kill other creatures. Next up, Elite Spellbinder. What makes this card so good? It's a 3/1 flyer. Okay, yeah, so it's a beater in the air. It also taxes a card from your opponent's hand and lets you look at your opponent's hand. Being able to look at your opponent's hand on something like turn 3 and then just start beating them down, slowing down their hand, messing up their game plan is hugely important. Mavinda. Mavinda lets you recast spells. You will almost never be paying the 8 additional on her, but Mavinda lets you recast all your buff spells, and you're going to want to do that. This card is great. There's a lot of combat tricks that you can recast with Mavinda. You can cast one spell on your turn and on your opponent's turn. You can get a ton of value. 10 out of 10 would recommend this bird. It's also a 2/3 flyer. Will win cards. Now this one. Sparring Regimen has probably won me more games in draft than any other rare. This card gets you so much value. It enters the battlefield, it learns. Cool. Maybe you learn for like a token maker. Cool, you get a token out. Whenever you attack, untap a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it. You get to choose which one. You get some flyers, because you're probably going to have flyers in white. This game is done. Sparring Regimen does a lot of work. Teferi's Protection. This is a mythic rare that's in the archives. It's hard to come by, but it is tricky to deal with. It pretty much puts your board and you in stasis for a turn, which means that you can leave yourself open to being, like, lethally attacked. And you just Teferi's Protection, it protects all your creatures. If you have a board wipe, there's not many in the set, but if you have a board wipe, you can phase out your creatures and then wipe the board, and then all your stuff comes back, and then you attack and then destroy your opponent. Mila and Luca. I actually think that Mila is the better side of Mila and Luca. I know Luca's a Planeswalker. Planeswalkers are usually good value. Luca's best thing is that he can kind of reanimate creatures. You can even like bounce those creatures back to your hand. Mila oftentimes will draw you like 3 or 4 cards because there's so many combat tricks or like little amounts of spells that your opponent will have to withhold from using on your creatures because they don't want you to draw a card. Mila will probably get you some good value. Both sides are good, though. Ignore Uvilda. Look at Nasari. Nasari is fantastic because they steal cards from your opponent. It's free stuff. It's free real estate. Sedgemoor Witch. This is another one of those the biggest, the bestest, wins you all the games. Sedgemoor Witch you've probably even seen in constructed play because having a Magecraft ability that makes a token is really strong. Also, it's a 3/2 with Menace. It's got Evasion. It's got Ward. It's going to hurt your opponent pretty much no matter what. Rowan and Will. Ignore Rowan. Will's great. Rowan, she's fine if you can ult her in like 3 turns, but if you can't, she doesn't protect herself very well. She doesn't deal that much damage. She's not great. Will, on the other hand, has a plus ability that will seriously screw up your opponent. The only thing it doesn't majorly stop is fractals, because the fractals are +1/+1 counter based, and Will doesn't really take them out. Venerable Wardsinger. This is a punchy little creature. It's super aggressive. It's got vigilance. It's got trample. When it deals damage, it can return permanents from your graveyard. Creatures from your graveyard to the battlefield. It can even return itself. So if you have a damage increasing combat trick with Venerable Wardsinger, you can increase its damage dealt and cause it to return itself from the graveyard. Your opponent will have to deal with this or have a huge blocker in order to get around it. Kashmina! She spits out fractals over and over. If you can protect her, she's great. Quandrix Command. I mentioned before, bounce spells in this set are crazy good. This is a combat trick bounce spell that also can counter something or put +1/+1 counters on your creatures. The final shuffling things from the graveyard into the library is rarely going to be what you choose, but there are times when, let's say, your opponent uses Wardsinger, and the Wardsinger has made contact and is trying to return something to the battlefield. They have it targeted. You remove it from their graveyard. They shuffle it back into their library. It's no longer returning to the battlefield. That's the kind of tricks you can do with it. Cody! It is easier to build with Cody in a draft than a sealed, because you need to build around Cody. Cody is lit, though. If your deck is almost entirely spells and not creatures, sorry, non-creature spells, Cody rules. I love playing Cody decks. If you get a Cody and you have a lot of good high-powered spells that you can chain together, especially high-cost, high-powered spells, Cody is worth considering. Strixhaven Stadium. This is actually a mana rock that can let you win the game with an alternate win con that's not hard to pull off. If you have a couple evasive creatures, this can be your way to victory. Day of Judgment. It's a board wipe. It's a board wipe. Y'all know how it goes. There's actually a couple other board wipes I forgot to put on this list. There's one that destroys either all dragons or non-dragons. That's Crux of Fate. Also worth looking at. But board wipes, generally good. Archmage Emeritus. Card draw engine for life. This dude will draw you so many cards. He's the best. Ifrit Flame Painter. There is a discard synergy in Prismari colors that allows you to discard high-cost spells that are common or uncommon. There's some that you'll see. And recast them. Ifrit Flame Painter is a must to deal with, and with all the combat tricks in the set, the double strike is double relevant. Extus. Ignore Awaken the Blood Avatar. Extus is the good side. Extus's double strike is good, means that it's strong in combat, but more importantly, the Magecraft ability. You cast a little spell, usually a little aggressive spell, maybe a learn spell, you're returning a creature from your graveyard to your hand. There's a bit of sacrifice stuff in the set, not that much. But there's a lot of cantrip and spells. Like, this set is full of cantrips. That's a card that replaces itself, usually by drawing another card. You cast those, you're bringing back your beater from your graveyard. You just keep doing that over and over. You'll end up getting good value out of Extus. Dramatic Finale. This is kind of a surprise hitter. So Dramatic Finale is, I'd say, one of the two of these 4-color hybrid cards that I think is really, really, really good. Dramatic Finale means that if your creatures die, you get a 3/2 flyer. Like, anytime a non-token creature dies, once per turn, you instead get a big creature token. This ends up adding up to a lot of flyers. They're hard to deal with. It's hard to keep this in check. It means your opponent's going to be kind of struggling between attacking or blocking your creatures because they know you're going to get a flyer if they do. And if it's a token, then it's already probably one of these Inklings. Galzeth Prismari. This is one of the Elder Dragons. What makes it so good? It's a 3/4 flyer that comes with mana. That's honestly it, but this thing is a big flyer for this set. You want to know what bodies it? There's a common. Little librarian. I'll show it later. It can deal with this. But I still think it's a very strong card. Blade Historian, giving all your attackers double strike. It can end games very quickly. It's kind of like Lean and Light Scribe and just how aggressive it is. Shadric Silverquill. This is a modal creature, which means that each time you go into combat on your turn, you get to choose one of these things for yourself, one of these things for your opponent, or nothing at all. You do not have to choose these abilities, but you'll almost always have a reason to. For example, you can give yourself a 2/1 flyer, and your opponent can get +1/+1 counters on all their creatures, and they'll only have like one creature out, so it doesn't really matter because you have a giant flyer. Also has double strike. Shadric's rules. Hoffrey. Hoffrey is awesome. Hoffrey, kind of like Dramatic Finale, means that your creatures are hard to get rid of. But Hoffrey is actually like, oh, I'm a 5-mana 4/5. I give your Spirits, which is a very common creature type in red and white. I give you Spirits +1/+1 and Trample and Haste. Whenever any other non-creature you control dies, non-token creature you control dies, it comes back. And it's bigger and faster and stronger because it has +1/+1, Trample, and Haste. Good luck dealing with Hoffrey. Quandrix, again, just a big flyer. The +1/+1 counter thing isn't that relevant. Can make your other creatures bigger, though, on the attack. Wandering Archaic, another one of those, hey, you want to know something about this card? If you get this in your sealed pool, you should run it. There is no downside to running Wandering Archaic. Explore to Vastlands, you will pretty much never want to cast, but Wandering Archaic is a good card. As a 5 mana 4/4. It is an avatar. It is not an artifact, so it does not die to artifact removal. And it forces your opponent to essentially pay a 2 mana tax anytime they want to cast a spell. It's good stuff. Professor Onyx. Her plus ability gives you card advantage. And her passive Magecraft kills your opponent and gains you life. I have both won with Professor Onyx and lost to Professor Onyx. Velomachus Lowerhold. Probably the strongest of the Elder Dragons. It costs 7 mana though, but if you can get this bad boy out, he's gonna do some damage. Flying Vigilance Haste on a 5/5. Turns out that kills people in limited. It does. It kills people in limited. Mascot Exhibition. This is a lesson. It is a really good lesson. And there are ways to recur spells from your graveyard in this set. So you learn, you get this lesson, and you can, wait until you've gotten like 3 learns in. Behold! It's a ton of creatures. There's not many board wipes in this format. It clogs up the air, the ground, everything. It's good. Cast it multiple times. Copy it with Rutha. And Magma Opus. Magma Opus is 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of permanents. Cool. So let's say you take out 2 creatures like that. Taps permanents. Usually gets rid of blockers. Makes a 4/4. Draws you cards. It's just a good card because it does everything. You can also discard it early if you want treasure and bring it back from the graveyard later. Oh, wait, I forgot one more. There was Hall of Oracles there. Hall of Oracles! This is really good! So I'm kind of in front of it. Hall of Oracles is fixing and +1/+1 counters. You will be casting a lot of spells, and you will be putting +1/+1 counters on things. You can run this in any deck. So I've actually built together some more lists. I actually want to go next to the non-lessons worth ignoring. So these are a bunch of rares that you should not put in your deck. There's like a few situations. These, they're not so much that you don't want to put them in their deck. It's just that you don't want to build around them. Having this as fixing is kind of disappointing. I think the campuses are actually better in limited. Devastating Mastery. You always be paying the 4 mana cost for this. I've never seen anybody pay the 6 mana cost. It's just not that good. Like, it's a board wipe, but it's not that good. Fervent Mastery. Completely useless and limited. Rush Rebirth. It's not that good. It pods down. Double Major. You're not going to be casting that many creature spells. You're almost entirely going to be casting spells that make creatures, but not creature spells. Double Major's better and constructed. Culmination of Studies. This card just kind of just messes you up. It's like disappointing in what it does. And Dark Ritual. There's like a couple times you'd want Dark Ritual. You'll know when you want it. It's like when you know your deck has a potential to win on like turn 4, and Dark Ritual's how you do it. But for the most part, Dark Ritual won't help you that much in limited. Cool. Cool. I know, you can use Rebirth on your opponent's creatures, but it pods down, and it very often does not get you the value you want. Because there's ways to make things indestructible, or bounce things in response, and do all sorts of tricks mid-combat to stop something from dying. The next list I built up here are the commons that are really, really helpful. Elemental Masterpiece. It spits out 2 4/4s. You will get to 7 mana in a lot of games. You can also recast it from graveyard. It can give you treasure. It's nice. Cogwork Archivist. This is a common that is a 4/5 with reach. Flying will kill you in this game if you do not prepare for it, or have your own flyers, or have reach. This is colorless, and you can put it in any deck. If you don't have a high end, this is your high end. Rise of Exodus. 6 mana removal. Exiling removal. Also hates on a spell in a graveyard. Lets you learn. Learning good. Variant Books. Yeah, this card does so much work. It's like you'd think Totally Lost is like a, kind of meh card. When half your opponent's creatures are giant tokens, and this can cost 3 mana, sometimes 2 if you happen to have a certain happy little owl. Variant Books is good. Professor of Zoomancy. It's a 4/3 that comes with a 1/1. Turns out that 2 bodies for the price of 1, kind of like this, it does work. Also, a 4/3 is kind of scary in this format. Combat Professor. This is my girl. Combat Professor is a 2/3 that can give any one of your creatures +1, +0, and vigilance until end of turn at the start of combat. This will swing a lot of combats in your favor, and it's also a big bird. It does something on a turn it comes down. It's good. Frost Trickster! If you have 10 Frost Tricksters, you should run 10 Frost Tricksters. Frost Tricksters lock out one of your opponent's cards and let you swing in the air. It's a flying Frost Lynx. There's like no downside to this card. Heated Debate, good removal. I know I like said to myself I wasn't gonna put removal on this list, but Heated Debate, this is good. I know there's like other things, but in red, Heated Debate's good. There's also like Igneous Inspiration, but that's uncommon, so it doesn't make it on this list. Blood Researcher and Quandrix Pledge Mage. There are a ton of itty-bitty bits of life gain in this format. There are commons and uncommons that, like, whenever you cast a spell, you will gain life. There are spells that gain you life. There's a uncommon that you tap it to gain life once a turn. Blood Researcher will get huge. It has menace. It's awesome. It's a threat. Quandrix Pledge Mage. You're gonna cast spells. This will get big. It gets big. It's good. Hunt for Specimens. It's just my favorite learn card because it makes a 1/1 and lets you learn. Yay, learning! Okay. The next one is actually the, kind of the biggest one of these lists I've put together. It's like the other one that had the bomb rares, only it's got some uncommons on here too. I don't think I need to talk through all of these, but I am going to quickly show that there's a bunch of cards in here that are removal that are worth running. A lot of these will get you extra value, some 2-for-1s. Some of these are just like, oh, this is a bite spell. It's a very nice thing to have in this format. Also gains you a little bit of life. Things like Eye Twitch. It's a 1/1 flyer that learns when it dies. Ooh. Multiple Choice. It's a value card. Abundant Harvest. It sets up your next draw perfectly. A lot of these uncommon learn cards are going to be what really can swing a game, because they're good value. It's a 2/1 for 2. That's already not bad. Also can get you another spell. Demonic Tutor is funny, because it's just like, oh yeah, this doesn't make it onto my list of bomb cards, because you need another bomb to get with it. Otherwise, it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna cast Demonic Tutor. You know what I've gone with Demonic Tutor in my draft before? Forest, because I needed a frickin' green land, and that's the one I had. Augusta's nice. You can just kind of like take it all in. These are all good cards. Things that have trample are good. Things that are exiling removal are good. Yeah, Putrefy, instant speed, destroys creatures, excellent. Creative Outburst, deals damage, draws cards, does work. And now, just before I close it out, Bookworm. What makes Bookworm good? It's Worm. It's an 8-mana card that I've cast in pretty much every deck I've put it in. Turns out that an 8-mana 7/7 with Trample is actually really good in this format. You don't want to have too many high-cost cards, but like, you can get a Bookworm in your deck. You should run a Bookworm. It's a good card. And those are Amy's favorite cards of the limited format. Yeah, you can probably figure out, if you're used to evaluating drafts, what cards are strong. It's just a matter of balancing things out, making sure you have the right number of threats and removal, having spells that get you additional value, things that keep you alive while you get your bookworms out. And don't forget about your lessons. Always make sure you have some learn cards in your deck if you have even like one lesson worth playing. And remember, in every sealed deck, you're gonna have 6 lessons. In a draft, you actually have to focus on drafting lessons, but that's not the same thing in sealed. So like right here, what lessons do I have? Wow, I actually have some nice lessons. I have Fractal Summoning. It's okay. Spirit Summoning. Pretty good. Pest Summoning. Very good. Elemental Summoning. One of my favorites. Inkling Summoning. One of my favorites. I managed to get all of the mascots. That is all of the mascots. And I got 2 Mercurial transformations. Gross. I don't like this card. It's never been useful for me. Never been useful for me. I feel like somewhere, somehow, it's gonna be like, oh, you turn your opponent's flyer into a 1/1 that doesn't have flying, and it you attack in the air. That's never happened for me. But these are all good. I would actually say Fractal Summoning you should value lower than the rest of these, because it's going to give you a lower return on investment up until like 10 mana. Yeah. So I have lessons. That means I should include learns. This is good. This is good. This is better. This is better. This is actually a combat trick that you have to play around. Play around Enthusiastic Study. If your opponent has 3 mana open, one of them is red, and they are attacking you with a creature that wants to make contact with your face or would otherwise trade with your creature, Enthusiastic Study. It will catch you by surprise, and you will have to deal with it. Igneous Inspiration. This can hit your face. It's really, really good. I have one in this deck. That's really, really good. Rides of Extus. I know it costs 6 mana, but it's good. Just trust me. Cram Session. It's okay. What I like the most about Cram Session is that it immediately makes an impact by gaining you life. You can play it for black or green hybrid mana. It makes it very easy to cast in a lot of splash decks. I would play it over maybe Arcane Subtraction if I don't have Death Touchers. Arcane Subtraction is really good if you have Death Touchers. But otherwise, yeah. It's learning time! Do not forget to learn in your deck. It's an important mechanic, and it will be relevant. Also, learn can allow you to chain together spells. As an example, I cast Arcane Subtraction. I have something with Magecraft. Excellent. I learn one of my lessons. All your lessons are sorceries. No matter what, it will trigger Magecraft. Lesson learned. So thank you all so much for listening to me rant about Sealed for 30 or so minutes. I hope I answered the questions that you were interested in hearing about, and maybe got just like a basic introduction to the set if you haven't seen it before. Before I go, if you are interested in a little bit more flavor of the set, I'm actually going to talk very quickly about the students and the deans. Really just the students. So I'm going to go over to Strixhaven uncommons that are multicolored, because that's the easiest way for me to find the legendaries. There are 5 legendary uncommons. For the most part, they are good. Killian is always good in a deck. Rutha is always good in a deck. Zimone is always good in a deck. Dina is sometimes okay in a deck. Pintorius, you need to build around. This is like a 2 mana 1/3 at worst. This is a 5 mana 2/4 at worst. You should include these in your decks if they are on colors. Rutha will give you value. Killian will discount your kill spells. Zimone will ramp you and draw you 2 cards per turn. You're gonna get to 8. You're gonna get to 8 lands. I just wanted to point them out. There's also the Deans. So if I go to same filters but rare. Oh, the Deans! There's also some other punks in here, like Pugilist. Pugilist is good, but like, ignoring Pugilist, which is a 3 mana 8/8 with trample. You have the Deans. For the most part, at least one side of them is good. Both sides. One side. Both sides. One side. Kind of both are okay. Neither of them are amazing. I like Ibrahim because he's a 3/3 flyer for 4 mana. Kian can spit out tokens over and over. They're good. Awesome. They teach at the school. I just wanted to talk about them for a second. Thanks for listening to me. I hope you all have a really good time playing in the Arena Open. Good luck!